In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
Half a day, everyone, and welcome to In Full Zoom. I'm Nestor Licanto, and our guest this week is Dr. Maria Claret Ruane. She is assistant professor of economics at the University of Guam, but she's talking to us today in her capacity as a private citizen to talk about her recently released report on the economy of Guam for 2021. Dr. Ruane, how are you?
Nestor, I'm very well. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year, Jason, to the KUAM team. Thanks for having me today.
All right, and so you wanted to do a little bit of a caveat to explain that you're not actually representing UOG in this particular release of the report, are you?
Yes, UOG policy is to make it clear that when we write reports as a citizen, that we actually say that we're not speaking for UOG. So any good parts and bad parts, anything that's omitted, any errors on this report, I take responsibility for. Nonetheless, it's an opportunity for me to be able to give back to our community as an economist. I've been in this profession for 35 years. And, it's been an interesting economic time. And so it's always interesting to write a report like this. I had to do this solo, again, as a private citizen. So I do miss my co-authors in the past 3 years. I've had wonderful co-authors, some of our current students, some alumni from UOG, some faculty colleagues from UOG. So there's a lot of differences how to do this solo. There is an advantage doing this solo is that once I finished the report at 6 p.m. on Thursday before Thanksgiving, Thursday, December the 3rd, sorry, I'm off. Thursday before New Year's Eve, December 30th, as soon as I finished the report, I was able to send it out. So there's no delay because a report like this is very short life, given what's happening with the environment, with our economic environment or everything else, especially still related to the pandemic and this Omicron variant. As soon as something is written, as you would know, being in the news media for so long, that it needs to be released right away. So part of it also is just to say, it saved me a little bit of time to do this solo. I don't have much available personal time. My weekends are spent studying SAT with my daughter, who will be off to college soon. So, usually I'd write a report like this on weekends, and which I don't have available. We did shut down our SAT review during the Christmas break, my daughter's request. And so that gave me time to write this report. So that's just, that's the difference. And as I said, as soon as it's written, it's out there for better or worse.
Yeah, as you said, 2021 was a very interesting year economically, to say the least. So tell us, which some of the highlights that you released in the report?
Well, it is an interesting year because, on the pandemic side, on the public health side, we continue to battle, to suffer from this pandemic and, some of the restrictions we continue to face. And of course, all to keep us all safe. But at the same time, it seems to be there's a dichotomy. We do have a public health situation, but at the same time, precisely because we do get a lot of support, pandemic support from the federal government, that the economic side of it is that the economy for 2021, my forecast is it'll actually do well number-wise. So this is again where there's a divide, right, between what we're going through on the health front and then what we're going through in the economy, partly because the economy is driven by monies that come in and spending on for different purposes. And so I'm a bit shy to share the forecast, but it's, I don't think the Guam economy has seen this ever. I'm forecasting a 26.7% growth for the year 2021. I say forecasting because the official estimate won't come out until late 2022. So let's say maybe I should say I'm estimating a growth of 26.7. It's quite significant, but not unusual, right? When I saw the number, I had to recalculate. Could this be happening? It's part of my responsibility. My calculations have to be pretty spot on. So I did go back to everything. And I looked at the US economy during the third quarter of 2020. And so, or if I would rewind on the second quarter of 2020, the US economy decreased by about 31%, and then it rebounded the following quarter. So it can happen, and it's just, it's a matter of the economy rebounding from the pandemic. And so I see that to be 2021 was our rebound year, economically speaking. Keep in mind that the report's written before the Omicron variant effects are factored in, if any. So again, always need to be careful with what that figure represents.
Right. And as you mentioned, 26.2% growth is astronomical, but most of that was fueled by federal assistance, about 4.5 billion.
It's quite significant. So, the money has to go somewhere, right? So $4.5 billion in our economy that estimated to be, and just looking at my notes, I think we were measured at $5.8 billion in 2020. So, so $5.8 billion in 2020. And then if you factor it, that $4.5 billion is more than half the economy. It's money that enters our economy and gets spent on, again, different projects, some of it to fight the pandemic, some of it continuing to fuel our military construction. And as you know, just before the year was over, the NDAA for fiscal year 2020 has been approved. And, the past 3 years, we've been getting quite a bit of military funding for construction on island. I think for next year, we're looking at about $750 or so million. So this money enters our economy. They do get spent. They change hands. They create economic activity. They create products for us. They create jobs for us. And I'm hoping for more job creation this coming year.
Yes,
As you know, also local experts is, the construction industry, if you focus on that, that's really weathered even through the pandemic year of 2020. So that sector has continued to be strong, and that's expected. That was strong last year as well, 2021, and expecting to continue to have a strong, so some of it is federal government spending, but obviously tied in with it is construction boom that we've been experiencing and probably will experience this coming year. And
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E.
So you mentioned construction as one of those industries that benefited tremendously from the economic activity of 2021. What are some of the other industries? Because it was not equal among industries, right? There were some industries that did pretty good and some that did very bad. So what were some of the ones that did well and some of the ones that did not do so well?
Well, I don't have that table. I actually have a table in the report that looked at employment. The latest that we have is June 2021. So I rewound that to report it on the table from June 2019 before the pandemic to June 2020 to June 2021. And then I looked at the changes between those periods. So from 2019 to 2020, that's supposed to be, I hope, the height of the pandemic, and I do that with quotes because I hope we're out of this, we're out of this situation. So I want to declare it to be the height, remove the quotes right on that. And then what happened for between 2020 and 2021. So another sector that seems to have done well even during the pandemic is in fact the real estate sector. So I won't claim to be an expert there. Other people in our community are experts, and there's very good reports out there for the viewers and our community to check out. But I know that despite being in a pandemic, again, if you look at some transactions, but also median prices of homes have been it has been increasing, and I think the forecast is quite positive on that. Again, continuing until next year. So for more details, it'll be interesting to look at that table. I wish I know what it is. I can cheat and look at it right now, but I don't want to take away from from giving attention to you and our viewers at this point.
Yeah. Anecdotally, you would think that businesses like grocery stores, maybe telecommunications, the wireless
Oh, yeah, sure.
companies, they did well. But other industries, the obvious one, tourism, because of just the complete collapse of the tourism industry, the hotels
That's right.
fared very badly, I would think. So there was that uneven impact of all of that federal largesse. Yeah.
And I agree with you. And in fact, that is too bad, because even those businesses still in the area of tourism, from 2020 to last year, 2021, and the forecast is still not as bright for 2022. So at the end of the report, I kind of just zoomed into the year 2024 to hopefully, for things to be back in order to some extent. I know that forecast for tourism would be to hopefully make a complete rebound by that year. So to some extent, I'd like to fast forward and get to 2024, because it holds some more promise compared to our situation, certainly last year and maybe this year as well.
Yeah, by all indications, the tourism industry is going to be, and the tourism industry officials have acknowledged this, it's going to be a slow climb back. There's just so many different variables, and a lot of it is out of our control. We're very dependent on the governments of our source markets, and we never know. Like we were talking about earlier, we don't know where this whole pandemic is going. At one point, we think, okay, this is it, and then Omicron comes, right? So
I know. And in fact, when I'm keeping up with the news about our tourism industry, when I wrote the report, there were about 5,000 cancellations. This is coming from the vice president himself, reporting to the chamber during their 2022 economic forecast, that there were about 5,000 cancellations to come to Guam right after the Omicron came into the picture around Thanksgiving. I remembered that weekend precisely because I saw what happened to the Dow Jones in the U.S. The financial markets just decreased quite significantly that day. I saw another set of cancellations, so I'm hoping that's the same 5,000 that I saw before, because I'd hate for tourism to experience another 5,000 cancellation by 5,000 visitors. But to be honest, like what we're talking about, we're still in uncertain times, and I won't be surprised if those are actually new numbers.
Yeah, and tourism, of course, has been the main driver of our economy, along with federal spending. And even though there's been a lot of talk about diversification of the economy, I don't see any industry that is going to pop up overnight that's going to be able to replace tourism or federal spending. Do you?
That's right. No, I don't. And I'm always rooting for the best for our island. But to be honest, as I was doing this research, I was able to go back to a news article back in 2009 where I think the title is something like "We Need More Industries on Guam." And so, you can go back even farther than 2009 when the discussion about new industries, the discussion has happened for quite a long time. I'd like to think, and I take the chair of the GIDA board, his word seriously. And again, this was when he shared with the chamber the forecast that it's hopefully things have lined up better in terms of diversifying our economy hopefully soon, right? But I'm with you. The way I forecasted for this year, as I have no indication. My magic ball doesn't tell me there's any industries coming up this year, so that when I run my numbers, I can't assign anything to what the contribution of that industry would be, because so for my purposes, for the work that I do, it's I pretty much just assume there's none. And so, of course, if there are some additional activities that happen this year, then that's great. The numbers would look even better. Because speaking of that, Nestor, while we're talking this year, as in 2022, I don't, as much as I have this large positive 26.7% expected growth from last year, 2021, my forecast for 2022 is negative. I've explained why, but if the pandemic were to be over, which is great news, really, But at the same time, that could mean a reduction in federal government support precisely for that purpose. So when I ran my numbers, and since 1.9 billion of federal spending in 2021 was related to addressing the pandemic, the vaccination, also, trying to get the economy to recover and so on. If all of that goes away this year, again, just it doesn't have to be doesn't have to be all in or all out, but just I like to calculate conservatively. If all of the $1.9 billion federal money goes away this year, despite the increase in the NDAA appropriation for this year, and despite we did have the infrastructure law passed, and we're expecting to see 193 million from there. And even with some recovery from the tourism industry, that's still going to hit our economy in the larger picture quite a lot. So I'm looking at negative growth, and quite loosely, I have to admit and apologize for that, but looking at -2 to -% forecasted growth for 2022.
Yeah.
Not good news.
How bad is it going to be, do you think?
Well, that's the figure that's coming out. So if you want to compare that with the year 2020, that the official report is our economy was reduced by 12%, 11.9%. So if I'm forecasting, hopefully we'll be closer to 2%. If it's a 2% reduction, I hate to say this, but again, as a macroeconomist, it's not like I'm looking at the larger picture. I know some people and some businesses are hurt, but others are helped. So it's hard to, I can't take sides. I look at the larger picture. Let's put it that way. A -2%, I think our economy could absorb. It's not good news, but I'm just going to say it might not be obviously not as noticeable. A -10% would be similar to 2020, where we were at a -12%. The difference is that in 2020, we were at the -12%. Our economy went down 12%. And that's even with a pandemic assistance of about $2.4 billion.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's a numbers game, because we're such a small economy, $5.8 billion economy. So even 1 billion, 2 billions up or down can really reflect itself in how we estimate these numbers.
Yeah.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E.
I wanted you to comment on a couple of things. First, the employment situation or unemployment situation, whatever the case might be. And secondly, the impact of inflation. You want to take on the employment situation first?
Yeah, for the employment situation, I think like everybody else, we're waiting to get the updated information, because our latest employment data is still for June 2021. I understand, just hearing from Chief Economist Gary House, also from the Chamber, forecast that I think the numbers will be released soon. I'm sorry, I did not get a chance to check it today, but I actually just spoke to him just now. And so I know that it's coming out. We were, in terms of employment, as I mentioned, just looking at June 2021 versus a year ago, that there were some sectors that were coming back to life, which is great. And I think, again, it's that table that I've been referring to, so please check that out. But the reason I remember clearly in my mind is the way I color-coded the table, that when the industry went down, it was actually coded in red. So there were quite a lot of red from 2020 to 2021, and quite a few of those sectors turned green. So expecting some kind of growth, maybe some modest growth. So I think for 2022, the way things are lining up, and for better or worse, that the unemployment benefits program is over. And as you know, it's written in the report also, that made the decision to look for work a little bit more difficult, because even the director of the Department of Labor had come out in public to say that most people, they got more unemployment benefits. The amount was more than what they would have made if they worked. So it's really, this is, for an economist like me, this is like turning the incentive upside down, right? work should reward you, but not the way that the numbers played out. But nonetheless, I'm glad that unemployment benefits that we were included in that support, and that it really helped a lot of our families here. Some of my friends, some of the students have told me that that was a lifesaver for them during the pandemic. So now that it's over, I mean, again, in a system where we live, you need to find employment to support yourself. And so I know that even those in receiving unemployment benefits from August 1st had to show proof that they were actively seeking employment. And some have landed employment, some are seeking employment. So I'd like to think that the employment numbers, the ones that are coming out and for next year, would be in the uptrend. Most of the time, it's hard to forecast almost anything with the pandemic. Most of the time, when you look at our employment numbers before the pandemic, the changes are just small from one quarter to the next, or even from 1 year to the next. Okay. In terms of unemployment, so just to some extent, just the opposite. Our unemployment still sits at 11.4 for June 2021. And again, waiting to see what December 21 looks like on that, expecting that to go down. We were up to 19.4 in December of 2020. And keep in mind also, some people might say, well, during the Christmas holiday, there's a lot of temporary employment and part-time just because of the holidays. And I don't know if it's a bit more technical, but the way these numbers are, they're actually seasonally adjusted. So any strong or weak season had been factored out. But just the overall trend, I would think that unemployment rate would go down. So again, repeating that we're at 11.4 halfway through last year. And so, can't wait to confirm that. So that's what it's looking like on the employment and unemployment front. In terms of the inflation front, I didn't expect to have a longish section in my paper for that. Last year, I think it was one line. This is our latest unemployment. These are our latest unemployment figures. But it looks like our latest report was the third quarter of 2021. So we haven't rounded out the year yet of 2021. So again, just forecasting what I'm able to do. I reported an unemployment of 5.2 for the entire year 2021. Now, put that in context, we haven't seen unemployment like that since 2016. So let's put it this way. If you look at the report, one of the things I wanted to do is to summarize quite a few things, provide some historical data, some graphs and so on, for easy reference for our community. So I did have a graph of the inflation figure, I think going back at least 10 years. And so we haven't seen inflation. We haven't had to worry about inflation. And our inflation rate has sat between barely 2%. In fact, last year in 2020, yes, I agree. It's the slow year, pandemic year. Our inflation was actually 1.7%. So for 2021, my estimate for the entire year is 5.2%, again, to be confirmed once the report comes out. And so we haven't seen rates like that, like as high as that, inflation rate as high as that in a while. Now, of course, it's not a surprise because if you do look at the third quarter report where that came from, a lot of it, as we know, came from the prices we paid to gas our car. And another thing to say is I actually have a chart in the report also that summarized that. Thanks to our local, news media that gather this information, make it easy for me. Thank you for the wonderful work that you guys do that allowed me to just, to summarize everything at the end of the year. So how much that's increased, but also, with that increases in the cost of utilities, there was a little relief from that, thanks to the governor for allocating some federal funding to delay the increase, but it was supposed to be an increase from, I think it's from August and then another October 1st and December 1st. So even the third quarter captured that food prices have been increasing. And then some of this is related to the supply shortages coming from our main market, which is the US. And I think that's gonna get worse next year.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
We've only got about a minute left, so real quickly, we're looking at prices going up, federal assistance disappearing, a continued slowdown in the tourism industry. So real quickly, how would you wrap up what we're going to be facing in 2022?
Well, as I said, I wish I had good news. I don't. Given the numbers that you just summarized right now, there will be some kind of growth, just because I'd like to think that the private sector will start going back online, but some of that really depends still on what happens with the pandemic and what restrictions they end up facing, how much capacity they're able to go back to. And I know that for some businesses in tourism, I think quite a lot of them have permanently closed. So it's still not going to be happy news. So I think if you, I know it's not just number, but the story behind the number that I'm forecasting of negative, if you just want to leave it kind of in general, but very loosely estimating it between -2% and -10%, I think that captures what we talked about already. I'm not sure what's going to happen to some more. Is there any more federal monies that could come to Guam? I know that there's a Build Back Better that's still it's stalled right now at the Senate, but we don't know how that's going to be reshaped. I think in its current form, it's not going to happen. And I had mentioned a little bit of my view on that it's kind of a tricky situation, right? I know governments around the world want to be generous to their constituents. There's no government who don't want to be in that position. But just like you and me, we want to be generous to our families as well. But sometimes we can't afford it. We have to live within our means. And so the US government is terribly in debt. And so, it really becomes a question of, do you really need to spend this additional money? Can you justify this? And it becomes a difficult question to ask. So I think when I teach personal financial planning, it really boils down to living within our means and making the best of what we got, which is very, very typical economist, right? Limited resources, making the most of it, cannot waste any of it, right? Because why? But at the same time, you know what, the more that we know about our current situation, the more we could strategize for a better future. I'd like to stay hopeful. And so as we were discussing, I know there were sincere efforts that were going into discussing diversifying our economy. That really needs to happen. And I hope that we start seeing that. That will help us a lot in the next 2 years at least. And aside from that, I don't know. I don't want to be sad, but it's not very happy forecast for this coming year.
All right. That's the economic report from Dr. Maria Claret Ruane, professor at the University of Guam, professor of economics at the University of Guam. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Nestor. Happy New Year again to you and the KUAM team.
And Happy New Year to you. I'm Nestor Licanto. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week on In Full Zoom.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.